Welcome to the Human Archive. If you enjoy original science fiction stories about humanity finding its place among the stars, subscribe and join us for the next one. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The Last Shuttle. By the time Evacuation Marshal Demit Orask reached Wayfarer 9, Orrison's spindle had stopped rotating correctly. The error was subtle enough that most frightened civilians would never have noticed it. Artificial gravity still pulled toward the floor. The lights still worked in the evacuation concourse. The walls remained where walls were expected to remain. Demit noticed. Every few seconds, his weight shifted almost imperceptibly toward the inner wall. A loose emergency wrapper skittered across the floor, stopped, then slid in another direction as damaged attitude thrusters fought one another outside the habitat. Orrison's spindle had been built to rotate smoothly around its central axis. Now it wobbled. Demit had spent 27 years working orbital evacuations. A wobbling station was the sort of thing that became lethal gradually, then all at once. Emergency lights painted the concourse red. Overhead announcements repeated departure instructions in 6 Federation trade languages, while a 7th voice calmly assured everyone that reactor containment remained stable. Demit knew what that meant. Stable for now. 43 minutes earlier, an ore carrier had lost maneuvering control during departure and struck the habitat's outer utility ring. The ship had missed the residential cylinder and most of the occupied docks. The carrier had missed the residential cylinder and most occupied docks. The damage was still survivable for the moment. The impact had ruptured 2 coolant loops, destroyed 3 attitude control clusters, severed portions of the communications network, and damaged the systems carrying reactor heat toward the outer radiators. Engineering had contained the reactor. They could not promise to keep it contained indefinitely. Demit stood beside Wayfarer 9's boarding ramp and counted bodies. He counted people, not names. During a failing evacuation network, he trusted physical presence more than a status field. Names were useful when networks worked. During a collapsing evacuation, names could be copied, inherited, delayed, duplicated, or assigned to the wrong transport. Bodies were harder to misunderstand. A Myrani family hurried toward him. 4 adults and 3 juveniles wore emergency pressure hoods folded against their backs. The smallest child clutched a yellow evacuation token and stared suspiciously at the human shuttle. Demit understood the concern. Wayfarer 9 was ugly. Federation evacuation craft were designed around broad passenger compartments, smooth docking collars, and standardized control surfaces. Wayfarer 9 looked like industrial machinery somebody had accidentally given engines. Its central hull was short and thick. External maneuvering clusters protruded from either side. Heavy mechanical clamps surrounded a compact service lock instead of the wide automated docking ring found on passenger transports. The human pilot claimed it had spent most of its life servicing mining platforms. Demit believed her. Captain Rhea Maddox stood just inside the hatch in a gray flight suit with the sleeves rolled above her elbows. She was 44 by the human registry, though Demit had learned not to trust his ability to estimate human age by appearance. Her attention stayed on the boarding line. A station worker pushed toward her with 2 additional evacuees. "There's room," the worker said. 2 more. Rhea looked into the passenger compartment. "There are no restraints. They can sit against the bulkhead. It's a short flight." "No." The worker stared at her. "Captain, this is the last group. There's another shuttle in Bay 6. It hasn't launched yet." "Then they go there." The worker's voice sharpened. "There is open floor." Rhea's expression did not change. "If we lose attitude during separation, everyone in this cabin becomes luggage. Find me 2 certified restraints or move them to Bay 6. The worker turned toward Demit. Demit checked the launch board. 1 additional shuttle remained attached, with 12 seats still available. "Bay 6, he said. The worker looked angry for half a second. Then he took the evacuees and ran. Rhea glanced at Demit. "Thanks." "You would have refused anyway." "Yes." Her refusal reassured him. She would not trade basic restraint safety for speed. Humans had acquired a reputation in rescue circles. Depending on who told the story, they were either unusually persistent professionals or reckless mammals with a cultural inability to understand the word no. Demit distrusted both versions. Demit had seen courage become an excuse for ignoring physics before. Wayfarer's flight engineer appeared from the rear compartment carrying a coil of bright orange tether over one shoulder. Parker Yun was younger than Rhea and built more lightly, though Demit had already seen him move equipment that required 2 station workers. He stopped beside a medical cargo container sitting loose near the aft bulkhead. Who loaded this? No one admitted responsibility. Parker sighed, threaded the orange tether through the floor anchors, and cinched the container tight. There, now it becomes our problem instead of a flying problem. Demit almost smiled. A Myrani woman caught his sleeve. He recognized the panic before she spoke. My children. Demit turned toward her. Which group are they with? School Refuge 3. They were transferred into family evacuation. My sister was supposed to take Io with the others. Demit opened the family manifest. The family status showed green and complete. He checked the group identifier again. The Guardian tag had crossed a departure lock. All associated dependents showed evacuated status. The system shows the whole group evacuated, Demit told her. The woman's shoulders dropped. Thank you. She hurried toward Wayfarer's boarding line. Demit watched her go. Then he checked the status one more time. Green, complete. The word steadied him. The evacuation had been terrible, but it had worked. He had overseen the transfer of thousands of residents into rescue carriers, civilian freighters, industrial transports, medical ships, and anything else capable of holding atmosphere long enough to clear the danger zone. He had refused overloads, closed unsafe docking sectors, redirected families, delayed one departure to recover an immobile patient, and denied 2 late return requests because the station's worsening rotation had already made those docking corridors unsafe. People often hated evacuation marshals while the evacuation was happening. Demit could live with that if they stayed alive. Being disliked was better than being mourned. The final passengers boarded. Wayfarer 9 sealed its hatch. Demit took the jump seat behind the cockpit because final accountability still belonged to him. Parker strapped into the engineering position opposite. Rhea settled at the controls. Station traffic, Wayfarer 9 requesting release. Static answered before a voice broke through. Wayfarer 9, release authorized. You are inside final outbound window. Do not delay. Rhea looked through the forward display at the docking structure, sliding several meters away from its expected alignment. Wouldn't dream of it. The clamps released. Wayfarer floated beside Orrison's spindle for a heartbeat. Then Rhea fired lateral thrusters. The shuttle moved cleanly away. Demit felt the acceleration press him into the restraint. The docking arm receded. Beyond it, the damaged utility ring rotated into view, scarred open in 2 places and venting pale coolant into vacuum. Orrison's spindle grew smaller. 30,000 people had lived there when the accident happened. Nearly all were now aboard evacuation craft. Demit allowed himself one breath of relief. Then he opened the individual airlock transit record. A juvenile transponder was missing. Chapter 2. 1 tag missing. Demit checked the record twice. Then a 3rd time. Family Evacuation Group 12 showed complete. The adult Guardian had crossed Dock 7 29 minutes earlier. 5 dependent tags had been associated with the Guardian. 4 had crossed evacuation airlocks. 1 had not. Demit searched equipment diagnostics. Juvenile transponders failed sometimes. During a mass evacuation, a damaged tag could produce exactly this sort of discrepancy. That possibility lasted less than 30 seconds. A medical record appeared beneath the missing identifier. EYO, MYRANI juvenile pressure hood seal failure. Removed from family transfer, relocated to School Refuge 3 pending replacement. Demit felt the cabin temperature change, though he knew it had not. The note had been entered 29 minutes before Wayfarer launched. There should have been another record showing Io rejoined with the family group. There was none. He pulled the medical team's status. Disconnected. He opened the family transport file. The degraded network had inherited the adult Guardian's departure status across the dependent group. Green, complete. Demit stared at the same word he had shown Io's aunt. Marshal Orask. Parker had turned toward him. Demit did not answer. He sent a priority query toward Orrison Spindle's refuge network. Most of the station did not respond. School Refuge 1 returned nothing. Refuge 2 produced an old environmental packet and then timed out. Refuge 3 answered. The refuge returned a weak emergency power signal, 1 active life sign monitor, and 1 Myrani juvenile occupant. Demit's throat tightened. The beacon transmitted again. Io was alive. Rhea looked back from the pilot's seat. What happened? Someone is still on the station. Parker did not curse and Rhea did not gasp. Both simply went still. Rhea asked who. A child. How old? 7. She turned forward again. How do you know the child is alive? The refuge beacon is active. Parker pulled the station schematic onto his console before anyone asked him to. Demit opened a priority channel to Fleet Command. Evacuation Control, this is Marshal Orask aboard Wayfarer 9. We have an unaccounted juvenile in School Refuge 3. Life beacon confirmed. Request immediate recovery authorization. The response came quickly enough that Demit knew the decision had not required debate. Denied. He closed his eyes. The controller continued. Final recovery threshold passed 4 minutes ago. All vessels are ordered outbound. No further approach to Orrison's spindle authorized. Demit understood. The worst part was that Demit understood the order. He understood perfectly. Rhea asked, "How long does the refuge have?" Demit brought up the shelter data. The refuge has air for several hours. So air isn't the immediate problem. No. What is? Reactor heat rejection. Engineering cannot guarantee containment beyond the evacuation horizon. Rhea studied the aft display. How far is the kid from a usable lock? Demit opened the station map. School Refuge 3 is 6 levels in from service lock 12. Parker asked whether the service lock still carried a structural safe status. Green at last update, Demit said. How old is that update? 8 minutes. Parker's mouth tightened. Rhea asked for the station's current rotational drift. Demit gave it to her. She frowned. Worse than departure. Yes. Fleet Command repeated the no-return order. Demit acknowledged it. He had heard similar language 17 years earlier. It had been another habitat. Another accident, but the same kind of decision. 2 workers had been trapped inside a pressure-isolated manufacturing ring after the evacuation threshold closed. A shuttle pilot went back. The craft lost maneuvering power during docking. A tug responded to recover the shuttle. Then the habitat's failing power core ruptured. 9 rescuers died trying to recover 2 missing workers. Demit had served on the casualty review. He had listened to recordings from the dead pilot explaining that she only needed one more approach. He had read testimony from supervisors who admitted they had wanted to stop her, but did not want to be the person who condemned 2 trapped workers. Every analysis reached the same conclusion. Evacuations required an end point. Eventually, one more trip became too many. Eventually, a rescue became withdrawal. Demit had carried those 9 deaths through the rest of his career. Rhea's voice pulled him back. Marshal. He looked at her. She had not turned the shuttle around. Her hands remained on the outbound controls. Show me what that cutoff is based on. Chapter 3. The Rule. Demit sent the Federation recovery calculation to Rhea's console. She read silently. Parker leaned over his own display. Standard shuttle approach, he said. Yes. Automated docking alignment. Yes. Full pressure lock cycle. Yes. Passenger loading estimate 7 minutes. For a mixed civilian group. Parker glanced toward Rhea. She still said nothing. Demit disliked the silence. That cutoff exists for a reason. Rhea looked at him. I didn't say it was. You're looking for a way around it. I'm studying what it assumes. It estimates whether another recovery can finish with the required safety margin. Using what vehicle? Demit hesitated. A standard evacuation shuttle. Rhea gestured around them. Wayfarer isn't a standard evacuation shuttle. No. Wayfarer 9 had been built to service asteroid mines and half-disabled industrial platforms. Its lateral maneuvering thrusters were oversized because mining structures were often rotating, tumbling, or inconveniently damaged. Its mechanical clamps could attach to service frames without full docking ring synchronization. Its airlock was small. That had slowed evacuation loading. Demit remembered Rhea complaining about it 2 hours earlier. At the time, it had been one more reason he preferred dedicated passenger craft. Parker started constructing a separate timing model. Demit watched the human engineer remove several assumptions from the Federation calculation. Full passenger loading disappeared. Standard pressure equalization disappeared. Automated dock acquisition became manual clamp capture. Rhea still did not touch the ship's course. Even if your craft can shorten the docking cycle, Demit said, the station rotation has deteriorated since this model was issued. I know. You will lose time matching it. I know. The automatic dock may refuse to certify an approach. Probably. Demit stared at her. You are remarkably calm about that. I can dock manually. That does not make this safe. No. The simple answer stopped him. She was not pretending the approach was safe. Parker looked up. If we went straight back from here, it doesn't work. Demit felt relief. Then Parker added, we're too heavy. Rhea nodded, and full of passengers. Yes. Demit looked between them. Rhea turned toward him. I am not turning this ship around with 36 evacuees strapped behind me. Some of the pressure in Demit's chest eased. Then you agree with command. I agree I'm not taking 36 evacuees back into that. She pointed ahead where the rescue carrier was growing larger. We were already going there. Parker understood before Demit did. We offload everyone. Rhea nodded. Then we strip weight, top propellant, and run the real numbers. Demit's relief disappeared. You are still considering a return. I'm checking whether we still have a workable return. Command has denied it. You still have emergency authority over contracted evacuation craft until the incident closes. Demit looked sharply at her. You checked my authority. I read the briefing. Parker glanced over. Rhea lifted one shoulder. It was in the briefing. Demit turned toward the aft display. Orrison's spindle continued shrinking. Io's beacon pulsed on the corner of the screen. Io was alive. Waiting in the refuge. Following the instructions Demit's own evacuation office had taught every Myrani child. The instructions were simple. Stay in the refuge, seal the pressure hood, activate the beacon, and wait for an authorized adult. The child was obeying. Chapter 4. Get them off my ship. Wayfarer 9 reached the rescue carrier 6 minutes later. The carrier's receiving bay was crowded with shuttles, freight craft, medical transports, and industrial vessels that had become evacuation ships because nothing else was available. Rhea requested priority unloading. Fleet Command challenged the request. Demit authorized it before she could answer. The evacuees needed transfer regardless of what happened next. The evacuees needed to transfer whether or not the rescue was approved. The hatch opened and the evacuees began transferring. Rhea stayed at the cockpit until every restraint registered empty. She did not rush them. An elderly evacuee required assistance standing after the hard launch. Parker helped. A frightened child dropped a bag halfway through the airlock and tried to turn back for it. Parker stopped the line, recovered the bag, and returned it before letting the transfer continue. No one behaved as though Io's life gave them permission to become careless with anyone else. When the last passenger crossed onto the carrier, Rhea checked the cabin counter herself. 0. Then she looked at Parker. Strip anything we don't need for the return. He unstrapped immediately. Demit followed him through the passenger compartment. The transformation was ruthless. Parker removed the spare seating modules, 2 storage containers, the portable boarding bridge, non-essential passenger supplies, and water beyond the emergency reserve. A cargo pallet of replacement cabin filters that belonged to another station crew. Parker kept the emergency medical kit, pressure equipment, portable cutter, rescue tethers, and tools. Everything that could help them retrieve Io remained. Anything that could not help retrieve Io became unnecessary mass. Demit watched the navigation model update with each removal. Acceleration improved. Fuel reserve grew. A carrier technician stepped through the hatch. Fleet says this craft is not authorized to return. Rhea answered from the cockpit. We haven't been cleared to return. Demit disliked the word yet. The technician looked at him. Marshal Orask. Demit could ground the shuttle. One order from Demit could ground the ship. He could remove the uncertainty. He could not remove Io's uncertainty. He could remove his own by grounding the ship. He hated recognizing that motive in himself. Parker finished the mass calculation. The return profile stays above minimum reserve. Demit moved toward the engineering console. By how much? Not by much. That is not reassuring. I know. Rhea called back. Where are we lying to ourselves? Demit turned. Demit paid attention. Rhea wanted Parker to find the weak point. Parker studied the timing model. Then he enlarged the approach sequence. Here. Rhea leaned toward him. Rotation match. Your first pass assumes the station drift stays close to current rate. It won't. Venting torque is increasing. How much do I lose? Best case 90 seconds. More realistically, closer to 2 minutes. Rhea adjusted the calculation. The safety margin narrowed. Demit checked Parker's mathematics himself, then checked again. This assumes direct access from service lock 12 to the school refuge. Yes, Parker said. The last structural report already showed deformation in one connector. How much delay? 3 minutes if the secondary route remains open. And if it does, then we abort on internal time. Rhea folded her arms. Demit watched her. The calmness was not gone, but he could see the pressure beneath it now. Her jaw had tightened. She looked at the fuel reserve twice, then a third time. She was not fearless. She was working hard to stay careful. The carrier began pumping propellant into Wayfarer. Fleet Command opened a direct channel. Captain Maddox, your vessel is not cleared for station approach. Marshal Orask, confirm contractor compliance. Silence filled the cockpit. Rhea looked at Demit. If you ground the ship, I stay. Rhea did not threaten him. She did not imply she would ignore his order. She had placed the decision with the person who legally held it. Demit almost wished she had made it easier to oppose her. Chapter 5. The Decision. He studied the return profile until the numbers blurred. 17 years earlier, another pilot had believed her situation was exceptional. Demit remembered her final recording. She had sounded calm too. That memory frightened him more than Rhea's confidence. He had sat across from the families afterward and explained why 9 people had died trying to recover too. The dead pilot had not been cruel. She had not been stupid. She had simply crossed the point where determination became a substitute for margin. Demit refused to do that again. He looked at Rhea. If the approach fails, when do you abort? If we can't establish the match before the return reserve is threatened, we break away. Give me a specific point. Rhea nodded. Then she gave him a specific line. If Wayfarer failed to establish a stable rotation match before service lock 12 passed behind the damaged utility ring, she would break away. Rhea would make one approach with no second orbit. If the clamps did not report stable load immediately after capture, she would release. If Orrison's spindle's rotational drift exceeded the lateral thrust limit Parker established, she would abort before contact. Demit turned to Parker. You agree? Not yet. Rhea's eyes narrowed. What's wrong? Parker pointed to a thermal limit. You're being optimistic about the starboard maneuvering cluster. By how much? Enough that I want 6 seconds more cooling before final match. That costs approach margin. I know. Rhea considered for 2 seconds and changed the model. Rhea changed the model without arguing. The safety margin tightened again but remained positive. Demit asked, if Io is no longer inside the refuge. We leave, Rhea said, if the internal route takes longer than the deadline. We leave. If reactor containment degrades before the projection. We leave. Each answer hurt. Her willingness to abort under specific conditions was why Demit trusted the plan. Demit required every rescue plan to have a point where the crew would turn back. Without one, determination became another hazard. Demit opened the emergency authorization panel. His hand hovered above it. He thought about Io's aunt. Are the school groups accounted for? Green, complete. He had trusted one system because it represented information accumulated from thousands of people. That system had been wrong. Now another system said a return was impossible. But this time Demit could see exactly what it assumed. The model assumed a standard shuttle. A standard automated dock. A standard passenger load. And a standard pressure lock cycle. Wayfarer 9 was none of those things. The threshold had not failed. Its default model did not describe Wayfarer 9. Demit authorized one recovery attempt. Fleet Command protested immediately. He muted the channel. Rhea exhaled. It was the first visible relief he had seen from her. I need Parker. Demit nodded. I'm going too. Rhea frowned. No. Io is Myrani. We can put another Myrani responder aboard. I know the school refuge layout. I know the emergency command language used in Myrani juvenile drills. I know which service routes were open during the final evacuation. Your job is here, and I know that refuge layout better than anyone else available. Demit fastened an emergency harness. Parker handles the machinery. I handle the station and the child. Parker smiled briefly. Rhea did not. Then she gave one sharp nod. 3 adults would go back. For 1 child. With 1 attempt, the carrier hatch sealed behind them. Wayfarer 9 released. For several seconds, they drifted away from safety while every other ship in the region continued outward. Rhea rotated the shuttle. Orrison's spindle moved from the aft display to the forward glass. The broken habitat filled the cockpit. Rhea pushed the throttles forward. Wayfarer 9 turned around. Chapter 6. Back toward Orrison. Flying back toward Orrison's spindle felt wrong. Every visual cue in the traffic system pointed away from Orrison's spindle. Evacuation craft streamed toward carriers and distant holding zones. Wayfarer 9 flew against them. Demit knew the station too well. He knew the remaining coolant reserve. He knew which reactor systems depended on the damaged radiators. He knew how quickly an orbital habitat could go from difficult to unsurvivable, once structural and thermal failures began reinforcing one another. Watching Orrison's spindle grow larger felt like approaching a decision already made. Rhea did not talk. Fleet Command did. Repeated warnings entered the cockpit. She acknowledged each one without debate. Wayfarer 9, be advised rotational drift exceeds original recovery model. Received. Wayfarer 9, automated docking certification unavailable. Received. Wayfarer 9, final recovery threshold remains closed. Rhea's answer stayed the same. Received. Demit found the lack of argument unsettling. Humans, according to reputation, enjoyed arguing with authority. Rhea seemed to prefer spending her attention on the ship. The station's damaged rotation became obvious as they closed. The residential cylinder seemed to wobble against the stars. Service Lock 12 moved through an arc that no normal docking computer had been designed to accept. Wayfarer's approach indicator shifted from yellow to red. No certified solution. Demit looked at Rhea. She disabled automatic control. The sensor overlays stayed active. You retain the computer feed. She did not look away from the station. Of course. I expected a more dramatic human rejection of automation. The computer isn't wrong. That answer surprised him. It says the docking solution is unsafe. It says it can't certify one. What distinction do you see? Rhea adjusted lateral thrust. I don't need it to promise the dock will work. I need it to tell me where everything is. Parker monitored engine temperatures. Lock S coming around faster than predicted. Rhea changed attitude slightly. How bad? We get 1 clean pass. After that, the lock rotates behind the broken ring. Demit opened the station geometry and fed Rhea the latest structural position. Service Lock 12 moved toward them. The lock did not approach head-on. It swept sideways with the station's damaged rotation. Rhea had to match the station's rotation while also compensating for the lateral wobble caused by damaged attitude thrusters. Wayfarer fired 1 set of maneuvering engines, then another. The stars moved. The station appeared to stop rotating. Demit knew it had not. Rhea had simply made Wayfarer rotate with it. His stomach disliked the illusion. Parker watched the clamp alignment. We're high. Rhea corrected, still sliding outward. Another correction. An amber temperature warning appeared on the lateral cluster. Demit gripped the jump seat rail. The maintenance lock drifted beneath them. For one instant, he thought they had missed it. Rhea dropped Wayfarer sideways. The hull struck the maintenance frame. The impact was hard enough to drive Demit into his restraints. Demit's restraints bit into his shoulders. Metal boomed beneath them. Parker swore. Clamp indicators flashed. The clamp panel showed 1 red indicator and 2 amber. Demit's pulse hammered. Then the first indicator turned green. The second followed. The last stayed amber for a second that felt much longer. Green. Rhea kept both hands on the controls. Clamp load. Parker checked. Loads are high. Rhea waited, but stable. Only then did she release a breath. We have a stable clamp. Demit looked through the side display. The broken utility ring passed beyond them. Fragments of structure drifted in its wake. They had returned to Orrison's spindle. They had made the decision to return. Now they had to survive the recovery. Chapter 7. The Empty Station. The maintenance lock opened into darkness. Parker went first. Demit followed. Wayfarer's portable lights illuminated a narrow service passage filled with pipes, conduits, and maintenance rails. The artificial gravity felt tilted enough that Demit had to lean toward one wall to walk straight. Behind them, Rhea remained aboard. "I'll keep the clamps stable," Rhea said over comms. "You two get Io." Demit almost corrected the possessive. He did not. The inner hatch sealed. Orrison's spindle was not silent. Demit wished it were. Ventilation moved unevenly through the ducts. Emergency relays clicked somewhere behind the walls. Metal groaned as the station flexed under stresses it had never been designed to carry. A damaged speaker above them came alive. "All residents proceed to assigned evacuation sectors." Demit stopped. The announcement repeated. The evacuation sectors had no ships. Parker looked back at him. Demit forced himself forward. The direct route to School Refuge 3 crossed 2 residential connectors and a central public corridor. They reached the first connector. The door did not open. Parker inspected the frame. "The frame is bent." Demit checked the structural map. The deformation was not new. An earlier report had flagged the connector during evacuation. He had hoped the door remained usable. It did not. "We take the secondary route." "How much longer?" 3 additional minutes if nothing else changed. Parker looked at the surrounding station. "Then we should assume the estimate is optimistic." They turned into the service level. Parker carried the vacuum rescue kit. The orange tether he had used on the medical container earlier was clipped along the side. Demit carried the portable cutter case. He knew the station. Parker knew damaged machinery. The distinction became useful almost immediately. At the next junction, the illuminated direction sign pointed toward a sealed pressure sector. Demit ignored it. "Left here." Parker followed without question. "The sign points right." "The sign is using old network state." "That tells me enough." They moved faster. At the next hatch, Parker stopped Demit from touching the control. A faint frost line marked one edge. "There's a pressure difference across this hatch." Demit had missed it. Parker opened a manual bypass and equalized the small difference before cycling the door. Neither said anything afterward. Neither commented. They kept moving. The station shuddered. Dust drifted from a ceiling seam. Rhea's voice entered their headsets. "Rotation is worsening." Demit asked how much time they had. "You have about 10 minutes before the clamp loads become unsafe." "That tells me enough." "About 10 minutes before the clamp loads exceed Parker's safe range." Parker kept moving without comment. Demit kept moving. The refuge beacon strengthened. Demit forced himself not to treat proximity as success. Io was close enough now that failure no longer felt abstract. Chapter 8. Io. The school refuge door had jammed half a handspan out of alignment. Demit saw Io's small handprint on the emergency panel before he saw the child. The inner camera still functioned. Io sat beneath a reflective thermal blanket on the far side of the refuge. A pressure hood covered the child's head and shoulders. A ration heater glowed nearby. The emergency beacon rested in Io's lap. Demit stopped. The child had followed every instruction. Io had stayed in the sealed refuge, kept the hood secured, activated the beacon, used emergency heat, and waited for an adult. The evacuation system had failed Io. Io had followed the training exactly. Demit activated the intercom. "Io, can you hear me?" The child jerked upright. 4 Myrani eyes widened behind the hood. "Marshal Orask." "Yes." "Is the evacuation over?" Demit had spent his career giving frightened people clear answers. This one caught in his throat. Parker knelt beside the damaged door and examined the seal. Demit forced his voice steady. "We came back for you." Io stood. "Am I in trouble?" "No." Demit answered immediately. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do." Parker pointed to the warped frame. "If I cut the outer brace here, the seal should stay intact. If I cut lower, I risk opening the pressure gasket." Demit looked through the glass at Io. "Take the time you need to keep the seal intact." Parker glanced at him. "I know." The cutter ignited. Sparks scattered across the corridor. Io backed away. Parker worked with painful patience. Demit could hear Rhea's clock in his head even when she said nothing. Every second mattered. So did not depressurizing a room containing a 7-year-old child. Rhea came over comms. 7 minutes until I need you back at the lock." Parker did not speed up. Demit respected him for that and hated him for it at the same time. The outer brace released. The door opened 15 centimeters, not enough. Parker changed angle and cut again. His hands remained steady. The opening widened. Demit squeezed through first. Io stood near the wall. The child looked smaller in person. A yellow evacuation token hung from a cord at Io's chest. Demit lowered himself to one knee. I am Demit. I know. Io recognized him from the evacuation drills. His face had been on evacuation drills for years. The child's voice trembled. Where is my aunt? On the rescue carrier. Is she angry? No. Did she leave me? Demit felt the question like an injury. No. He did not explain failed synchronization or inherited manifests. There would be time later for adults to explain how an entire system had believed a child was somewhere they were not. She thought you were already safe. Io looked down, then nodded. Demit held out his hand. We are going to her now. Io took it. The child's fingers were cold even through the glove. Parker widened the door enough for them to pass. Demit led Io into the corridor. For several seconds, the rescue felt successful. Then the damaged refuge seal detected pressure movement from the open door. A warning tone sounded. Farther down their original return route, an automatic bulkhead slammed shut. Parker looked at the indicator. That sealed our return corridor. Demit opened the service map. Opening the refuge had closed their original route back. They had Io. They still had to reach Wayfarer. Chapter 9. The Other Way. The bulkhead had done exactly what it was designed to do. The damaged refuge sensor interpreted the pressure fluctuation as possible decompression and isolated the surrounding corridor. Under normal conditions, Demit would have praised the response. He tried the emergency override anyway. Nothing. The local network had failed. Parker examined the bulkhead. I can cut it. How long? Too long. Demit already knew. He opened the station map. There was one other route. The alternate route was shorter in distance, but closer to the damaged utility ring. The service level had been restricted during evacuation because local gravity stabilization was unreliable. We take the lower service level. Parker studied the map. What was its last structural status? Yellow on the last report. When was the report? Demit did not answer. Parker nodded once. That tells me enough. Rhea called from Wayfarer. Clamp loads are climbing. I need you moving. We lost the direct route. A pause followed. Then Rhea asked, alternate. Yes. How much longer? Demit looked at Io. The child was trying very hard not to cry. 5 minutes. Rhea understood what he meant. Plan for 4. I need margin to get us off the station. Demit wanted to object. He did not. If Wayfarer stayed attached too long, the station's rotation could tear the shuttle against the maintenance frame. Then Io would still be trapped, only with 3 adults added to the casualty list. Demit picked the child up. Io immediately protested. I can walk. I know. Then why can't I walk? Because right now I can move faster carrying you. Io considered the logic and stopped arguing. They descended 1 level. Gravity weakened with every meter. Demit's steps stretched unnaturally. Parker moved ahead, testing handrails before trusting his weight. They reached a damaged hatch at the entrance to the final service corridor. Beyond it lay the path towards service lock 12. Parker removed the orange rescue tether. Demit recognized it. You kept the cargo line. It's a rescue tether. Cargo was just what needed securing earlier. You used it on cargo. Parker clipped one end to Io's harness. The child looked worried. Parker gave a tired smile. I was joking. Io did not smile. Parker nodded solemnly. All right. He clipped the other end to his own harness. They crossed. Gravity faded almost entirely halfway through the corridor. Demit pulled himself along a rail with one hand and kept the other ready to catch Io. The child floated behind Parker, tether secure. Then the station lurched. A damaged attitude thruster fired somewhere outside. The entire corridor shifted around Demit. His hand slipped. He struck the wall shoulder first. Io swung sideways toward the opposite bulkhead. The orange tether snapped tight. Parker caught a rail with his right hand. His body stopped violently. A sharp sound escaped him. Io halted less than a meter from the wall. The tether stopped Io before the child hit the wall. Parker remained hanging by one arm. Demit recovered and pulled himself toward him. Parker, my shoulder. Do you think it's dislocated? Parker tested it once and immediately stopped. No, I don't think so. He pulled himself upright with his left arm. Pain drained some of the color from his face. Demit asked, "Can you move?" "Yes." "Can you work?" Parker looked at the injured arm. "Enough to keep moving." Ria's voice cut through. 2 minutes. Parker unclipped Io from himself and clipped the tether to Demit instead. "Clip Io to you." Then they moved. Parker's injury immediately slowed him. Parker became slower. Demit took more of the load. Io used the handrails when possible. The child was frightened. Io kept following instructions and used the handrails whenever possible. The Wayfarer lock came into view. They had almost reached it when Ria said, "Clamps are starting to slip." Chapter 10. The ship is hurt. Ria had already opened Wayfarer's inner lock. Demit pushed Io through first. Parker followed awkwardly, one arm held close to his chest. Demit entered last and sealed the station-side hatch. The lock had barely begun pressurizing when something struck Wayfarer 9 from outside. The impact traveled through the hull as a deep metallic blow. Io flinched. Ria's voice sharpened over the intercom. "We took a hit." Parker was already moving toward engineering. His injured arm hung almost useless beside him. Demit guided Io into the passenger compartment. Only 4 acceleration couches remained after they stripped the shuttle on the carrier. He settled the child into one and secured the restraints. Io looked toward the cockpit, where warning lights now reflected against the forward bulkhead. "Is the ship broken?" Demit checked the restraint one more time. "It took a hit, but we can still fly." Ria heard him. Ria glanced back but did not interrupt. Demit tightened the shoulder strap. Demit kept tightening Io's restraints. Parker called from engineering. "Left lateral cluster took debris. 2 thrusters dead. 3rd is reporting nonsense." Ria's hands stopped over the controls. Demit saw the change in her face. Ria did not panic. She started recalculating immediately. Parker isolated the damaged cluster. "We can't use the departure profile we planned." "I gathered that." The shuttle groaned against its clamps. Ria asked, "Tell me what I actually have." Parker read the surviving systems. Parker reported that 1 lateral cluster remained strong. The damaged side could manage only short bursts before thermal shutdown. The main aft engines were intact, and forward maneuvering remained available. Ria brought up the external view. The broken utility ring rotated past, closer than Demit wanted to see. "Can we release now?" he asked. "Not safely if we release straight away." "What happens if we do?" Ria pointed toward the utility ring. "We're attached to a rotating station. When I release, we keep the motion it gave us. With full lateral control, I could push across that. Now I can't." Demit followed the geometry. If Wayfarer detached at the wrong point in the station's rotation, its existing motion would carry it toward the broken ring. Fleet Command transmitted. "Wayfarer 9, station thermal containment has entered final margin. Separate immediately." Ria did not move. The station groaned. Demit felt the old memory rise again. Demit remembered the old pilot asking for one more attempt. 1 more minute. And 1 more rescuer becoming convinced the margin was still there. 9 people had died. Ria. "Not at this point in the rotation. Command says containment is entering final margin." "I heard them." "Then release." She looked at the rotation display. "No." Demit's fear sharpened into anger. "You gave me an abort line. And we're still inside it. With damaged maneuvering. That damage is exactly why I need a different release point." The broken ring passed across the external view. Ria leaned closer to the display. "Give me 1 more rotation segment, about 30 seconds. "Why 30 seconds? "No." She enlarged the station's rotation track. Then Demit saw what Ria was waiting for. Demit saw it. She was not waiting because she could not decide. She was waiting for the station's rotation to carry Wayfarer toward a safer release vector. Chapter 11. Release. The utility ring swept past Wayfarer 9. Ria watched it. Parker returned to the cockpit and strapped himself into the engineer's seat one-handed. His face had gone pale. "Damaged cluster is heating even at idle." "How long can I pulse it?" "Not long." Ria glanced at him. "I need a number." Parker gave her one. She nodded. Demit strapped himself into the jump seat. Behind him, Io began breathing too quickly. Demit opened the cabin channel. "Io, can you hear me?" The child answered. "You are still doing exactly what you should." Keep your head against the couch and leave the restraints locked. Are we leaving? Demit looked at the station, filling the forward display. Yes. This time he believed it. Fleet Command ordered immediate separation again. Rhea ignored the urgency in the voice and watched the rotation. The broken utility ring moved across their path. Demit finally understood her timing. At release, Wayfarer would inherit the station's sideways motion. If she released too soon, that motion would carry the shuttle toward the damaged structure. If she released after the correct point, the same rotation would already be carrying them outward. She intended to let Orrison's spindle throw them away from itself, then add thrust. The station had been fighting them from the beginning. Now Rhea was going to use it, assuming the timing was right, assuming the clamps released together, assuming Parker's damaged thruster estimate held. Demit found himself wishing for a rule. Rules were comfortable when physics agreed with them. Rhea's hands became absolutely still. The utility ring passed. A gap opened. Rhea whispered, "There." She released the clamps. Wayfarer 9 dropped away from Orrison's spindle. For one terrifying instant, Rhea fired nothing. The rotating station carried them sideways. Demit watched the broken ring slide behind their vector instead of into it. Then Rhea fired the healthy lateral cluster, not directly away. She added thrust along the motion they already had. Wayfarer accelerated sideways. Parker watched the damaged cluster temperature. Rhea pulsed it once. The shuttle shuddered. "Cut the damaged side," Parker said. Rhea cut the damaged side, then she brought the aft engines up. Wayfarer rotated nose first toward open space. Demit's restraints tightened. A piece of structural debris passed across the aft camera close enough that emergency lights reflected from its broken edge. Then it was behind them. Orrison's spindle began shrinking. Rhea increased thrust. The distance grew. Parker looked at the engine status. The damaged cluster stayed attached. Rhea did not look away from the flight path. "I'll take it." "Barely, but yes." Demit turned toward the rear display. Orrison's spindle continued its slow, broken rotation. This time, the distance kept increasing. Io's voice came over the cabin channel. "Marshal Orask." "Yes." "Am I evacuated now?" Demit looked at Rhea, her shoulders finally lowered by a fraction. "Yes," Demit said. "Now you are." Chapter 12. The empty seat. The rescue carrier gave Wayfarer 9 priority docking. Rhea objected. "We're holding pressure." Parker checked the pressure monitor. "For now." Rhea looked at him. "All right." Carrier control brought them in using external guidance because Wayfarer's damaged lateral cluster made precise balance difficult. The shuttle landed slightly crooked. The docking crew swarmed it. Medical personnel entered before the engines fully cooled. Medical staff found Io stable, Parker with a badly strained shoulder, and Demit shaking now that there was finally nothing left to do. Demit unstrapped Io. The child stood, then froze. A Myrani woman had appeared at the far side of the receiving bay. Io's aunt. Demit recognized her. She was the woman who had caught his sleeve before Wayfarer launched. The woman who had asked whether the school group was accounted for. The woman Demit had told yes. Her face changed. She ran. Io ran too. They met halfway across the bay. The aunt dropped to her knees and wrapped both arms around the child. Io disappeared against her chest. Demit stopped where he was. Demit did not interrupt the reunion with an explanation or apology. Rhea stepped beside him. She watched for several seconds, then looked toward the medics surrounding Parker. "He needs imaging." Demit almost laughed. "Your ship nearly tore itself apart." "The ship can wait, Parker can't." Then Rhea followed the medics with her eyes, until Parker disappeared into the treatment corridor. Fleet Command contacted Demit before he left the bay. "Marshal Orask, report to Incident Review. Your contractor deviated from the final recovery threshold." Demit looked toward Rhea. She had already moved to the maintenance crew and was pointing at the damaged lateral housing. Parker was being escorted toward medical. Io's aunt still held the child. Demit opened the command channel. "Captain Maddox acted under my authorization." Silence, then the controller asked him to clarify. "I authorized the recovery." "You used emergency discretion." "Yes." "You accept responsibility for authorizing the return." Demit remembered his hand hovering over the authorization. He remembered 9 names from 17 years earlier. He remembered Io sitting beneath a silver blanket with the beacon in their lap. "Yes," he said. Demit answered without hesitation. He closed the channel. Chapter 13. Accountability. The inquiry lasted 4 days. It did not abolish the final recovery threshold. Demit would have opposed any attempt to do so. The rule existed for a reason. Rescue crews had died because someone always believed there was time for one more trip. That remained true. What changed was the precision underneath the decision. Investigators reconstructed Io's abandonment first. The child's pressure hood failed inspection. Removing Io from the family evacuation line had been correct. Medical staff moved the child into a sealed refuge. Moving Io to the sealed refuge had also been correct. The station network failed before the transfer synchronized. The network failure had not been a deliberate decision. The failure came when the degraded network inherited the Guardian's departure status across the entire family group. The family group left under its adult Guardian identifier. When the communications network degraded, the evacuation system inherited the Guardian's green status across dependent members instead of requiring individual confirmation. A family marked complete had been treated as proof that every body had crossed an airlock. It had not. The revised procedure was simple. Whenever evacuation network integrity dropped below full reliability, every juvenile, dependent adult, and medically transferred passenger required an independent physical departure scan. No inherited status. No family group substitution. A green status would require proof that the person crossed the airlock. The second review concerned the recovery threshold. That argument lasted longer. Some officials wanted to preserve a single calculation because emergencies became harder when exceptions multiplied. Demit understood them. Then Parker showed the actual return model, standard shuttle approach, automated docking, full lock cycle, mixed passenger boarding time, standard acceleration. Wayfarer 9 had removed or altered every one of those assumptions. The revision did not let pilots ignore a closed recovery window. A specialized craft could submit a verified alternate recovery profile, but the responsible evacuation authority still had to approve it, and the pilot still had to define explicit abort conditions. Demit insisted on that last requirement. A recovery plan without an abort point was not a recovery plan. Without an abort point, it was only a dangerous guess. Rhea attended one technical session. An investigator referred to Wayfarer 9 as a high-performance rescue craft. Rhea corrected him. It's a mining utility ship. The investigator looked at the record. You manually docked it to a damaged rotating habitat after automatic guidance refused certification. Yes. It performed like a rescue craft. Rhea considered the phrase. It was built for damaged industrial sites. This was one. Parker attended with his shoulder immobilized. He corrected the official approach model to show where Rhea's first calculation had been too optimistic. Demit appreciated that more than any praise of the rescue. The report described a dangerous plan that survived scrutiny. A pilot who asked where her assumptions were weak. An engineer who challenged them. A marshal who checked the numbers. And a child who stayed in the refuge and followed training. Wayfarer returned damaged with everyone aboard alive. There was no medal parade. Wayfarer 9 received a new lateral thruster assembly. Parker received treatment and several weeks of restricted lifting. Io received a replacement pressure hood fitted to the child personally instead of assigned from emergency stock. Demit signed the revised local evacuation protocol. Then he closed the file. Chapter 14. Accounted for. Several days later, Demit returned to the carrier's maintenance bay. Wayfarer 9 sat on support struts with part of its left maneuvering assembly removed. Panels lay on the deck beneath it. Rhea was half underneath the open housing, arguing with a maintenance technician. This bracket doesn't fit. The technician held a parts tablet. The system lists it as compatible. Then whoever listed it never tried to install one. The part number matches. The holes don't. Demit stopped beside them. Rhea slid out from beneath the housing. Marshal. Captain. The maintenance technician used Demit's arrival as an opportunity to escape. Rhea watched him go. Demit almost smiled. Io and the child's aunt stood near Wayfarer's boarding ramp. The new pressure hood hung over Io's shoulders. Demit had spoken with the aunt twice since the rescue. She had never blamed him. Her lack of blame did not make Demit feel better about having told her the family was complete. Io had spent the days since rescue asking questions. Why had the refuge door stuck? Why did the station rotate wrong? Why had Parker hurt his shoulder? Why did Wayfarer make a strange sound during landing? The child saved one question for Rhea. Io walked over. Rhea pushed herself fully upright and wiped grease from one hand. Hi. Io looked at her for a moment. Why did you come back for me? Demit stayed nearby in case translation became necessary. It did not. Rhea answered immediately. Because you were still there. Io thought about that. The child reached beneath the new pressure hood and removed the yellow token hanging from a cord. Demit recognized it. Every Myrani child received one during school evacuation drills. Io placed it in Rhea's hand. The human turned it over. One side carried the school crest. The other carried a single word, accounted FOR. Rhea looked at Demit. Rhea climbed into Wayfarer's cockpit. Above the door ran a narrow strip of bare metal where the crew had attached old mission patches, a broken mining tag, and several small personal objects. She clipped Io's token there, then pressed it once with her thumb to make certain it would hold. Above the cockpit door, the token read accounted FOR.